Is burning the American flag free speech? Trump doesn't think so. Plus, this week, the Ford Idaho Center continues to be a black hole. The new nuclear USS Idaho sub reaches another milestone, a sweet one. And the Treasure Valley eyes the railway to fix traffic. This is the Yokel Idaho Midweek Report, where we give you an overview of the news you need to know in Idaho for the last week. And we all talk about how expensive rent and buying a house is here in Idaho, but it's worse than you may think. We'll answer just how bad it is in Boise later on in the episode. Also, to get full coverage on these and other important stories happening in Idaho and much more, go check our Substack where we report on a lot more in article form. Also, to ensure you're the most informed Idahoan in the room, hit the subscribe button right now. Now, let's dive into the report. President Trump signed an executive order on Monday that directly challenges how we handle flag burning and civil unrest. The order requires the Justice Department to prosecute anyone who burns an American flag, especially when it might incite violence or riots. This puts Trump on a collision course with a 1989 Supreme Court ruling that protected flag burning as free speech. But Trump's team argues that the courts never said that flag burning that leads to immediate lawless action or creates fighting words gets constitutional protections. The penalties for this are serious, up to a year in jail with no early release. Foreign nationals could face deportation if convicted as well. Trump also, at the same time that he was signing this, signed other orders that strengthen the National Guard's response to civil distresses, mainly rioting, and cuts federal funding from states that use cashless bail for violent criminals. So they get convicted for a crime, then they have no bail to worry about, and so they can basically get off scot-free. Here in Idaho, however, we value respect for our flag and maintain order in our towns. While legal experts debate whether this will survive the court's challenges, Trump clearly wants to restore what he calls respect and sanctity, end quote, to our national symbols, while giving law enforcement stronger tools to handle riots before they spiral out of control. And speaking of events that usually stay orderly, but in this case are having some funding issues, the Ford Idaho Center saga took another turn this week, as Nampa city leaders ruled out asking voters to fund the struggling venue. Monday's council meeting revealed harsh financial realities. The center bleeds money, and whoever owns it will need to pump millions in to keep it afloat. Councilman David Bills put it bluntly, the facility is, quote, defunct from a capital improvement standpoint, end quote. Whether the city keeps it or transfers it to the College of Western Idaho, someone has to cover the massive maintenance costs that have piled up over the years. Legal risks loom large, too. If the city fails to properly maintain the facility, lawsuits could follow. This means that taxpayers could face double jeopardy, paying for negligence and paying to fix it. Mayor Debbie Kleen and some council members worry about, quote, choking the life, end quote, out of a community asset. The council already rejected a tax increase in August that would have cost residents about $150 annually. Now they're left wrestling with what to do with the venue that hosts 150 events yearly but can't pay its own bills. This mess shows, I think, pretty well what happens when governments try to run entertainment venues, instead of focusing on core services like public safety and infrastructure where they're best suited. Which, did you hear about any of these stories on your usual news stuff? If you didn't and don't want to miss them in the future, subscribe and follow us so you don't miss any of our future news content. And as things kind of go a little bit nuclear with the Nampa situation, just not the radioactive type, there is one that's being powered by it, and it's a good situation. Our state's newest nuclear submarine hits another milestone this last week. The USS Idaho served its first meal aboard the vessel last Thursday night, marking another step toward the submarine's commissioning next spring. What made this meal special wasn't just the milestone, it was the dessert, because can't skip without dessert. Idaho Spud Bars from our very own Idaho Candy Company sweetened the occasion. The company's new owners, which we talked about on our Substack article about that, Paul and Megan Sturnevant, who bought the business just last month, wanted to contribute something meaningful. As for the history on this, if you don't know it, this Virginia-class submarine carries forward a proud tradition, She is the 5th ship to bear our state's name, following the legendary USS Idaho battleship that witnessed Japan's surrender in 1945. But what also makes this vessel even cooler is much of the advanced acoustic stealth technology aboard it that was developed right here in Idaho. The Navy's Acoustic Research Laboratory at Bayview, located where Camp Fergut was once training nearly 300,000 sailors during World War II, created the technology to keep our submarines undetected. The USS Idaho proves that from our lakes to the world's oceans, Idaho continues to serve America's defense in ways that would surprise most folks. And then coming back to Canyon County here, the commissioners for it approved a $162.2 million budget for fiscal year 2026, marking a step forward in addressing the county's infrastructure needs. After voters rejected 4 previous bond measures, including a $190 million proposal, commissioners allocated $7.5 million from county reserves to build a new women's jail facility at the Pond Lane property. Man, seems that we got that from a bargain. We went from $190 million to $7.5 million. Looks like we might be able to do it cheaper. Leaders expect to spend another $2.5 million next year, so just a little bit more, bringing the total cost to about $10 million over 2 years. This new 192-bed facility will replace the problematic Pod 6 detention center that has faced ongoing structural issues. Also in the budget, it directed $8 million in remaining American Rescue Plan funds toward constructing a new Sheriff's Administration building. These federal dollars were originally intended to help local governments recover from pandemic-related revenue losses. Also, county leaders addressed the West Valley Humane Society's funding requests, increasing support from $300,000 to $340,000 annually. However, commissioners declined the shelter's request to receive any unused maintenance funds at the year's end. Despite budget constraints from state legislation limiting growth to 8% annually, Commissioner Brad Holton emphasized the county's commitment to essential services while managing taxpayer dollars responsibly. And for any of us that drive down here in the valley on I-84 between Caldwell and Boise, knows the traffic woes and how it seems to be getting worse, especially whenever someone wrecks. Now Campus, that's the Community Planning Association of Southwest Idaho, says they found a better solution: commuter rail. Their Let's Ride Treasure Valley study looked at different transit options and concluded that rail, along with existing freight tracks, would work best. The proposed route would connect Caldwell, Nampa, Meridian, and Boise with up to 10 stops, mostly including park and ride lots. Now, out of all these options, they said that Idahoans actually supported this idea more than other transit options. The bad news, though, is that we're looking at $1.5 to $2.5 billion to do this, and Idaho doesn't have a funding mechanism for public transportation yet, so how would we get that money is the tricky part. Some folks worry about making it too easy to move around the valley, wondering if it might change the valley in ways we don't want politically or socially. Others question whether they'd actually ride it instead of driving themselves. Right now, though, it's all preliminary planning. Compass still needs to work with the Union Pacific on track access and lobby the legislature for funding. Without state or local funding, this will just stay on paper. They'll finish their final report by February 2026, and then the board votes whether to officially adopt the plan. Bottom line, though, we want to avoid being California's freeway nightmare, which for anybody that's traveled down there, it sucks. But solutions cost money that we don't have, so we'll see how that gets rectified as time goes forward with lawmakers. And speaking about development going crazy here in the Treasure Valley, the Boise housing market just earned another dubious honor. Boise led the nation in rent growth this last month. While rent across America stayed flat, it jumped 1.5% in July alone, pushing the median to $1,306 a month for rent. Now, this isn't new territory, sadly, for Boise. Back in 2021, Boise also ranked first nationally when rent exploded 30.8% in a single year. Though we've cooled down from those peaks, they're heating up again, with year-over-year growth climbing from 0.8% to 1.2%. As for what this means for those who grow up here like myself, We're watching Boise's pricing us out. While other major cities across America see rent growth between 6 and 8% annually, Boiseans are experiencing monthly-to-month spikes that compound quickly. When national rent growth drops nearly a full percent point, ours continues right on with 1.5% in 13 days. For young adults trying to stay near family or seniors on fixed incomes, these increases create tough situations. We've seen this cycle before, and it doesn't work well for anyone. The question now becomes, how do we build enough housing to meet the demand without actually losing the character, the spirit that makes Idaho and Boise worth staying in? Which, I don't have the answer on that per se right now, but if you know someone who does and needs to know this news, don't hesitate to share this episode. Your shares help us keep you and others informed about what's happening in Idaho. And getting into some good, yet sad news at the same time, firefighters continue to make solid progress against the rock fire burning near Tamarack Resort in Valley County. As of Tuesday morning, crews have contained 37% of the blaze, which has burned 2,792 acres since the lightning that sparked it on August 12th. Nearly 880 personnel are working this fire using heavy equipment and excavators to build fire breaks and strengthen containment lines. Crews have secured the northern and southeastern edges and are pushing toward the middle of the eastern flank. Officials say they don't expect the fire to grow larger, but about 160 acres of unburned vegetation inside the perimeter could still ignite and smolder for weeks. The weather presents both opportunities and challenges, though. Cooler temperatures help firefighters, but thunderstorm forecasts for this week could bring erratic winds up to 30 miles per hour. A flash flood warning runs through this evening, adding another layer of complexity to what they have to deal with. Evacuation orders remain active for several zones around Tamarack, with some residents still on set status, meaning they should be ready to leave immediately if conditions change. Road and trail closures also continue in Boise and Payette National Forests. Crews expect interior pockets to keep smoking until we get significant enough rainfall to fully extinguish what remains. And then closing out with a very encouraging story. In 2009, the economic crash hit our state's dairy farmers hard. Cody Turner faced a choice: adapt or risk losing the family operation that 4 generations had built in Gooding. Turner chose to switch his dairy to organic operations, partnering with a little old dairy company you may or may not know, Horizon Organic, for more stable milk prices. Quote, "I don't know anything about organic farming, but I'm gonna figure it out," Turner said. "Otherwise, as a young farmer, I didn't know if I'll survive another downturn like that," end quote. Switchman learning to farm like his great-grandfather did, without synthetic fertilizers or pesticides. Turner's cows now spend at least 120 days per year grazing on green pastures, with 30% of their feed coming from organic grass. Turner's admits that the first year was a disaster, but 10 years later, he's seeing benefits beyond stable pricing. The health of his cows and crops have improved dramatically, all starting with healthier soil. Dairy brings in a third of our state's agricultural revenue. If you didn't know, we're a very big producer. We can give Wisconsin a run for their money, making Turner's success story important for our economy. His willingness to adapt and preserve through challenges shows how Idaho farming families continue to innovate while honoring the land that they've stewarded for generations. And speaking of stewarding things, I have to take good stewardship of my time. That means I have to head out. Though I thank you for listening to the entire report. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If you like the Midweek Report, make sure to check out our other content. Also, if we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to us via email or by tweeting us at LocalYokelIdaho on Twitter. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.